back. So we are going to just continue where we left off. I have this weird sort of vasey looking thing, which I think we're going to hang on to. So I'm going to make a layer here called vases, because we're going to have a couple of things for putting things in. And then I can just grab this object. I'm gonna select everything and stick it in this layer, and then we can get on to something else. Okay, so in this video, I'd like to show you a couple of different ways of making things. I think we're going to actually use the idea of lamps, because when we come into the second assignment, we can use these in our assignment. I think also a lot of these forms might be useful for the simple object assignment as well. So I am looking at a lamp right now that is something that I think we could model pretty quickly. And it's going to use some techniques that we maybe haven't used before. It is a sort of desk lamp type object. So the desk lamp has a couple of characteristics. It's got kind of a base. It's also got a kind of neck, and then it's got a sort of you know what? I'm gonna go get it and show you. Okay, so I thought I was gonna go grab it, but it's really heavy, and it's sort of like the cord is lodged into all of my furniture. This is a extremely close representation of what we're going for here. So it's got kind of like two fluorescent lights. They're sort of lodged into a big sort of like metal thing that is supported by a curved base that you can kind of move around and curve however you want. And then it has this kind of curved base with a couple of little buttons. So I may refer back to this image now and again, just to use as kind of a reference point. But this is basically what we're going to work on for a little while today. And then I think we'll work on a much more complicated, not necessarily harder to make, just more visually complicated object. So, okay, so the first thing we want to think about is the base. And in order to make the base, I think we could certainly make a kind of freehand polyline. It looks like the base has pretty much a rectangular profile. But I'm going to go ahead and start with an actual rectangle. And I think I'm going to go ahead and just do the corner-to-corner rectangle. So I am doing what they call in the design world eyeballing it. So I'm just sort of drawing based on what I think the proportions are and the scale. So that looks decent. I do want to sorry about that. I do want to go ahead and just get it aligned with the 0, 0 for now. So what's unique about this base is that it's the footprint, or the sort of flat part of the bottom is rectangular, but the rest of the object is not rectangular. So if I just flip back to this for just 1 second, it looks like we've got this sort of upward piece, and then we've got this sort of downstairs piece that kind of has this lovely curve, and then it goes straight through here. And then that looks like about 1 inch to me. So we're just sort of, going for the general style. We're not replicating it exactly. So probably what I would do is go to the front or the right. In this case, actually, I think the right viewport would be a little bit more appropriate. And of course we want to get that in. So here within this right point, I would start to draw a freeform curve. And so if I take a control point curve and start on one side here, and then I want to, you may notice that right now I'm in ortho mode. That's not so great for drawing curves. Probably planar mode would be of a benefit. Since I may actually want to tilt these, but I'm going to compose them straight up and down, so that way that I know that they're planar. So we're going to start here. And again, I'm just sort of like freestyling this. I'm not trying to like make it like exact. Now you may be asking yourself, what if I need to make a straight line from here to here? My answer is make a straight line using the polyline tool. You're not gonna get the control point curve tool to be a straight line. So at this point I would hit enter, and that's going to truncate the line right there. And now I can use the polyline tool to draw the sort of straight part. And I don't know if anybody noticed, but there was a little bit of a taper here, so I'm going to back off just a tiny bit. And I think I might actually use the control point curve again here for the, and I'm just going to make like a very subtle curve there. Okay, so now we have these control point curves. Let me look back at the reference image. Let's see. Of course, I'm right in the way. It's kind of hard to tell, but it does look like they're sort of like tapered in just slightly on the side and front edges. So let's go ahead and do that. I think it would be a good exercise. So if we're going to take this whole curve, now notice right now that these are three curves that we've selected. And you can see down here, if I move the capture screen down just a tiny bit, down here it says 3 curves added to selection. So I can keep these separate, or I can keep them as a single curve. Now, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. For now, I'm going to keep them separate. If you wanted to, you could join them into a single curve by clicking the join function here. Let's just go ahead and do it just to see what happens. Now it says it has joined 3 curves into one open curve. So that could be useful for a lot of things. I'm going to go ahead and explode it, which is sort of the opposite of join. Okay, now it's back into 3 segments. So I think what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and rotate it just a tiny bit. So I'm going to be moving all over the place today. We can go ahead and you can see right now it's going straight up and down. And what we want it to do is to go like this. So let's go ahead and grab our rotate tool. And we're going to make the center of rotation can really be any point that is here. And then again, we can go further than we need to kind of make sure that it's not snapping weirdly. And that's actually all I'm really looking for is just like a very slight lean there. So, okay. So let's see what's happened now. These curves are no longer necessary, so I'm going to transfer them to the build curve layer. Okay, now we've got to, it looks like I actually doubled up on these, so I'm going to just delete the copies real quickly. See how I have 2? I just clicked twice when I was using the rotate function. And, you know, there's not a problem to having them doubled up really, but I just wanted to fix it. Okay, so Now, you may be asking yourself, what about this side over here? And I think that there are a couple of things that we can do. We can, because this is not symmetrical, we can't really rotate it into shape. We can't really, there's not a lot we can do, actually. I think we're going to have to go back to the build curves. This is why we save them. And we're going to take that curve that we made on one side and we're just going to drag it over to the other side using the move tool. So I want to move it from here to here. And I'm just going to apply that same rotate function. Does it have to be exactly the same? No, not really. I mean, I guess it would be nice if it were, especially if you're, you know, designing something for fabrication, but it doesn't have to be exactly the same. One thing that I'm going to do, okay, it's off of, that looks about right. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to bring these out of that construction curves layer. So I'm going to put them back on default because we're using them. And now I'm going to make my build curves invisible. Okay, so what I have now is sort of like an outer, you can see there, they're both tilted in. Things are looking pretty decent, as they say. Just, I don't know if anybody says that. I say it. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to get a surface. We want to get a surface here. We want to get a surface at the bottom, right? A surface here, and also a surface at the back. So it might be helpful to take a polyline and draw a line that connects the two back points. Hit enter when you're done with making the line. So now we should be able to pretty easily make some of these surfaces. Well, this is certainly the easiest. We've made this one many times. It's a planar curve, right? So I think we can certainly just say, hey, let's make a planar curve. Ba-bam! Done. What about this one on the back? Is that a planar? Is that a planar curve? No, it's not actually, because it has this slight bend. So let's deal with that in a little while. And then don't forget that we didn't make these curves into unique curves. So we could actually get another planar curve out of the top, because this is straight, this is straight, this is straight, and then we could make a bridge line, and then we'd have a planar curve. So let's go ahead and do that, just to get the easy stuff out of the way. Of course, that did not look like what I wanted to have happen. Aha. Okay. So I want on that point, from that point to that point. And now we should be able to just give this a planar curve treatment. Okay, so we're almost down to the hard stuff. So it looks like actually there are two more planar curve surfaces here, even though they're not sort of like ortho, they're not straight up and down at a 90-degree angle, they're still on the same plane, and that would be these side panels here. So we could certainly, make a planar curve surface here, I believe. So you may notice that I selected the whole bottom surface. Rhino is smart enough to know that we're asking about this edge. At least it should. So if it's not feeling smart enough, then we can take this curve and we can explode it. And then we can get that individual curve out. And then we can do planar curves. So, okay, so there's one. And now we got to do the other one. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, so now we have the sort of non-planar surface. So what are we going to do with that? Well, it's not that hard, not that crazy. What I would suggest probably for this, because it's kind of, got this roll to it, we're going to try an edge curve surface. And we're just going to try using the two sort of non-planar curves. And it will move in a straight line, so it should by default sort of fall along these straight curves. So let's try that. Let's try an edge curve. Boom. Wonderful. Okay, so that's great. That looks pretty cool. The next thing we want to kind of think about is we want to think about the sort of lamp shape and also the sort of tube. Now, if I go back to the example image here, you can see this lamp shape is like tilted, and it's also sort of like attached to this tube. That seems like kind of a nightmare to draw in that way. Like that would be terrible. What I would do is I would draw this part of the lamp flat on the grid and then transform it onto the sort of tubey thing. So let's go ahead and get in here to the tubey thing. So I'm going to start making the tubey thing by making, you guessed it, a control point curve. And so I want to start the curve, really I want to start it like right at the center of this object. As you can see, the snaps are not 100% behaving, and part of the reason is because even though we can see the surface dividing lines, that's kind of not really a thing. In Rhino, it doesn't really mean anything. So let me go ahead and adjust my snap preferences. So over here we can do a couple others that might be useful. Tangent, quadrant, knot. And let's go with those and see how those work. Okay. There we go. Center. Finally did catch it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just go with that. And the good thing is once we draw something here, it's going to, kind of, whoops, that's not what I want. Once I draw something there, it's going to kind of, oh my. All right, we're gonna have to make, because there's really nothing to snap to here, we're going to have to just very quickly make a reference point. So how can we get a point here, right here? Center's not going to work because it's a rectangle. Maybe quad would work. So, sometimes these work, but not all that well. We can do on surface, but again, I think it's just honestly easier if you take a line. And we're going to set up a midpoint snap. So it's going to actually plop there, and then it's going to plop there. Whoops. Of course, man, my fingers are like a little overly enthusiastic today. So it's going to plop there and then plop there, and you can see it's midpoint, midpoint. And so now we can snap to the midpoint of this line. So if you're looking for sort of like one, there it is, the midpoint. If you're looking for one thing that can be kind of a little bit annoying about Rhino, that's probably what most people would select. Now, I want this to be, for the most part, kind of straight up and down on the y-axis. So if I work within the right viewpoint here, and let me just refresh my memory about which direction this thing goes. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to want this to be like a kind of nice, big, graceful curve. And so I'm just going to kind of take a look at it and say, sure, we can rotate it later to make it less planar. But yeah, that looks plausible. Like, why not? And that seems great. So now from here, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to kind of like give this some mass. So there are, in the finished object menu, there are pipes and tubes. So you can take any curve and apply a pipe or a tube to it. It's super fun. So I think we're going to go for the pipe with flat caps. So that basically just means it's a solid, it's actually, you know, some people call that a rod, but we can call it a pipe. And the rail is this curvy thing that we just made, right? And then it says start radius. Okay. Well, we're gonna eyeball this. So I may actually want to turn the object snap off temporarily to just get a more fluid sort of experience here. I'm going to turn the grid snap off too, even. And that makes it, kind of releases it. It makes it nice and fluid. You can see down at the bottom, it looks like it's about 3/8. That seems fine. And then the end radius, I would like it to be the same as my start radius because it's doesn't have any taper or anything. And then point for next radius is just none. You can actually make a pipe that goes woo and has different radii. But we're not doing that right now. Okay, so there's our pipe. And now I think we're kind of ready to put our other part of the lamp on. So if I wanted to continue working on the origin here, I could certainly do that. I would do my sort of like, you know, classic trick of saying maybe this is the desk lamp. And just getting rid of these things temporarily. Of course, you know, you can, there are other ways that you can address this problem with Rhino, but there's really not much reason to at this point. I'm going to put this curve, just so it doesn't get lost. I'm going to put it under build curves. And you know, if it does get lost, you can always just do it again. Now I do want to have the desk lamp on for a little while just for proportion's sake, but notice that I'm working in the default layer at this time. So what I'm looking for is, I'm really looking for that kind of bottom platform of that lamp part, and how it is proportional, you know, to the base. And so if I look back to the thing, it's like maybe 3 or 4 times wider than the base, but it looks like it's also probably about as deep, or slightly less. So I'm going to work in the top view to just kind of set up this this scale relationship. And I'm going to use a standard rectangle right now. I'm going to turn my grid snap back on because that's kind of necessary here. That seems about right. So again, this is sort of like just really guesstimating. I'm going to turn the desk lamp off at this point, and I'm just going to move this to the origin in case I need to have it there for any reason. Now, what we're looking at here is like a kind of tented form, right? So it's got two triangles on the outside, and then it's got a straight line, almost like, you know, something that you could fold out of paper. So I think probably there are, you know, many, many ways to draw a triangle in Rhino. Probably the most direct way is with the polyline tool, particularly because we don't need all three sides of the triangle here. Two of the sides of the triangle are already drawn for us. So we could just come here and turn our object snaps back on, so we get this to kind of snap there. And we could kind of look for that point. Now, this is a little, you know, it's a little tricky. I mean, I don't know if I'm quite in the center or not. So I think a more sort of like foolproof way of dealing with this issue is to actually use the polygon tool. And the polygon tool, let me go back. The polygon tool is right here. It has, you may be asking yourself like, oh, well, where's the triangle tool? It's the polygon tool. So here it's got a center and a radius, and that's how you specify it. I think actually it would be better to use the other, the edge method of the polygon, because in this case, we have one edge that is already sort of set. And here you can see you can play with a different, you know, number of sides, right? So here's 9 sides. You can, obviously that's not, you know, it's more than 3. So let's go change it to 3 sides, and then we'll just put this triangle in for real. So, and we're doing just one side to the other. Plonk, plonk. And I guess the benefit of doing it this way is that we know that this is an equilateral triangle, and that it, you know, both of these sides are the same, and it's all balanced and everything like that. We could still, if this is too steep for us, it is going to give you an equilateral triangle, by the way. If this turns out to be too steep, we can take this, click on this point, and as long as we're pushing this straight down, we would want to enable ortho up here. As long as we're pushing this straight down, then it's going to still be like a, you know, a proper triangle. Or at least that's, I think, the only thing that matters there. And it does look a little high, to be honest, so I think I'm going to just bump that down a little bit. All right, so now you can see we have, let's see, one triangle on one side and no triangles on the other side. So this seems like a great opportunity to use the copy function. So I'm just going to grab this shape, and I'm going to grab the copy function, and it says point to copy from. I'm going to use this point right here. And then I'm just going to drag it down to this point. And of course, it's always a good idea to be checking in your perspective view to make sure that it didn't get like, you know, snapped to the back point or something like that. But this looks really good. Okay, fabulous. So, not to completely bore you to death, but we have a couple of options here. I mean, we're trying to make a sort of closed form. I think it would be a really great idea to make this form a solid, if we could. And the reason I say we want to make it a solid is because we want to kind of hollow it out the way that I showed you that other time. And the reason we want to do that is because we're going to put lights in it, and we want that inner surface to be able to reflect. If you have a surface allow me to demonstrate. So let's go ahead and make this a solid by, let me think about this. Let's go ahead and make this a surface by filling in these top two sort of faces. And so the first thing I need to do is I need to draw a line from the top point to the top point, just to get that going. And then let me zoom in on this just a tiny bit. Okay, let me swoosh my stuff around here. All right, so here, if we took the top face and the bottom face right here, and we went ahead and, you know, did planar curves and made them into surfaces. Quickly, I'm going to need to just, I'm going to need to explode these triangles because I need to get out at the sort of individual lines. So we want these, I'll explode this too. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so we're gonna make the ends, we're gonna make the top and the, you know, the sort of top surfaces, but we're gonna leave the bottom open. And this is purely just to show you like why you wouldn't want to do this. Okay, so let's make this into a planar curve. Now, if you're doing a lot of the same operation in Rhino, I can't believe I haven't told you this yet, but you can actually just hit enter and it will repeat the last command you used. So it just repeated the planar surface command for me, which is super clicky saving if you're doing a lot of the same type of thing. Okay, so what we have here is we have something that's really close to what we want, right? It looks like what we want, but if you look at the bottom, these surfaces, if we get into rendering mode where we have like materials and lights and all this stuff, which we will do in the future, this bottom area is like it's kind of like the nothing from, I don't know, you probably have never seen Neverending Story, but it is, it's like it has like no light, it has no presence, it is actually the back of a surface. And what you want always is the front of a surface, because that's how, you know, light gets reflected in 3D environments. So it's a pretty easy fix. In order for us to get this thing to be hollow, but not to have these be the backs of the surfaces that we just created, we're going to just take this bottom part, we're going to go ahead and fill it in. Okay, so we went ahead and we filled it in, and now we want to take the whole thing and we want to go in here to the solid menu and say create solid. Now, if you're looking to make something that it doesn't have a hole in it or doesn't have a recess in it, you can stop here. But if you want it to have like an interior space or some sort of like a you know, like a cup that actually has an interior that has a color and has you know, detail, then you definitely want to do this thing called creating a solid. And then we would actually shell out the bottom. And so in this case, we want to remove the bottom face. The thickness is, let's think a little bit about the thickness. It's set to about 0.1. So each of these is about 0.25, so that seems just right, because we do want it to be thin. It's like possibly made of sheet metal. Oh, screw you. Okay, it says it's not solid. We don't actually care if it's solid. What we care about is that these are legit faces. So it might be that the wall thickness is too thin. Let me go back and do it again. I would call that Rhino weirdness. This is going to be just fine for us. Another thing that you need solids for is 3D printing, which we may have time to talk about towards the end of the unit. Okay, now let me kind of get back on track here. So we're we've got this thing. We want to probably put some light units in it. So what I want to do there is probably just draw some points onto this face, and then make a line that comes, you know, out and kind of through the object. And yeah, then those can be our light objects later on. We could just put a single tube in there. In terms of Rhino, there's not going to be a lot of difference between one tube or two tubes. So we could take some liberties on that, I guess is what I'm saying. So let's see, we got to get our snaps set up right. I'm going to turn some of these off just so it's giving me fewer options. You know what I'm going to do, actually, because I can easily snap to this part, I'm going to actually set the line up here. And then I'm just, after I make the tube, I'm going to move it into place. So, because sometimes it's just not worth, the effort. So, my tube I can find in here, or pipe, rather. And the rail is just going to be one of these flat curves. And my start radius, let's see. Probably just a size of 1 seems reasonable. And then I'm going to end it on 1 point for next radius. That's all fine. And now I have this kind of object that I can just, you know, slide into place. And so that's going to sit inside this fixture. And later on, we're going to go back to this, probably in a video or two. We're going to come back to this and we're going to actually light this. So that'll be super fun. So now, okay, we've got our sort of like light hood done, and now we need to kind of join it up with the other part. So I'm going to bring back the desk lamp at this point. And now from here, it really just becomes like a kind of like simple move. So we want to take this and we want to center it on the hood. Actually, what would be super useful before I make the desk lamp layer visible is I could take this whole layer and group it. So that's also Command G if you're into, or it's this. So grouping it will just allow me to like select it without screwing up the desk lamp. And so from here, I want to, in the top portion, you know, I want to get it kind of vaguely centered. And then here, I want to kind of move it in to place like that. The way that this tube is interfacing right now is a little weird. And so there are a couple things that we can certainly do about that. we can, now I'm not upside down anymore. We can, probably what I would do is I'm going to take this piece and I'm just going to rotate it a little bit, because I think even likely if you were actually using this, you know, it would be pointed up. And so let's go ahead and do that. So we can rotate it. I'm going to turn ortho off so I can kind of swing it freely. Again, I have copy on right now, so, you know, I just want to turn that off. Then I can get rid of this. And then from here, you know, we could consider, for sure, like making some kind of a transition piece, or something like that. Probably what might be useful is to actually take this and intersect it with this. And then we can use what's called a cutting object. So if you just want it to look good on screen, we can take this, and I'm going to make sure that this lampy part kind of fully intersects this. Okay. And at this point, I want to trim. Select object to trim. And so that's just going to let me kind of like cut off that intersection, because it, you know, it looks a little messy, a little ugly. And so now I probably want to take the selected stuff, which is not on the desk lamp sort of layer, and go ahead and stick it on the same layer. So it's the same ugly color green, which you can totally change if you want. And, you know, there's just a couple of other things that I wanted to show you regarding, you know, especially on this kind of lamp thing. One thing is you'll notice that a lot of our surface joints are hard edged. And we can certainly soften some of these up if we want to. So there is such a thing as a fillet, which is, you can do it to curves, but you can also do it to surfaces. This is the surface menu here. So you can fillet a surface. And what a fillet does is it basically just like, it's like rolling a ball, a carving ball along that corner edge. And so if we said here that we want to fillet this surface and this surface, well, it just did it. Now the problem with it, the problem with what we just did is that the radius was far too large. So right now the radius is 1, which you can see is like humongous. It's, you know, an entire grid unit. So let's maybe do like a 0.1. And let's try that again. And you can see now it's gray because we're still on the default layer. So just to show you what that would look like, kind of joined with everything else, I'll go ahead and throw it on the object layer. But it is a way of like kind of making those edges look a little bit more refined. Usually if the radius is too large, it will just fail. So let me go ahead and do this side again. And again, I'm still on that layer. So let me throw it down here. So yeah, it can just be a fun way to kind of like, you know, figure things out. Now, you may need to use that split function that I just showed you and kind of clean up any little intersections, which can be done. So yeah, that split function or the trim function is those are the things to use. So let's see, we've got a couple more things in here that we want to take a look at. I'm going to go ahead and make our desk lamp invisible. And you can see we're sort of like piling up this, you know, hopefully eventually will be a room full of stuff. But I think the last thing that I wanted to show you today is a sort of really fun, a really fun way of working in Rhino. What we've been doing up to this point has been extremely additive. In other words, we're taking things and we're adding things onto it. Or we're taking, you know, curves and we're sort of, you know, using them as a basis for addition. You can also work in Rhino in a way that is called solid constructive geometry editing. So that is basically taking a solid. So we're going to use a solid from the Rhino solid menu, although you can certainly make your own solid. Okay, so a box. First corner of base, yes. And, you know, we can just make it as high as we want. I'm going to actually make it pretty high. And then we can also, let's go ahead and take something that we make and turn it into a solid. So I'm going to make it perpendicular to the box. And I'm just going to make some weird freeform thing. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and go to solid and extrude planar curve straight. Okay. You better get away from here. It's not for kitties. And then I'm going to go ahead and take this object that I just made. I'm going to move it so that it intersects with the box. And I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Okay, so now, as you can see, I have two objects, two solids that are intersecting each other. Okay, so what I do is I go to solid, Boolean two objects, and then you have to select the two objects, and then you click through to illustrate the different ways of intersecting the objects. So it's super awesome, basically. You can make holes, you can carve away at objects slowly by using this Boolean operation. You can do it more than once to something. So if you wanted to fill something with holes or put a doorway in somewhere or you can do all sorts of interesting things with this method. So I want to make sure that you know about it. Yeah, I think that's it for today. My cat master appears to be calling me. So I will see you all again next week.